What's good, YouTube? How's everyone doing this lovely whatever day I'm going to drop this? It's your boy Reg in the building. Got my homeboy Try with me.
What up?
Yeah, just to let you guys know, I'm actually driving while I'm doing this review and whatnot. So, yeah, here it is. We're going to give our thoughts on the Soul for Real Unsung episode that
Yes,
broadcasted last Sunday.
yes,
Um, you guys should know who Soul for Real are. We did a review on the Candy Rain album,
yes.
95. So that was a dope album, to be real with you. Um, yeah, man. I mean, honestly, I didn't really learn a lot of new shit. Well, I mean, I learned some new shit from this Unsung, but I'm just gonna give a rundown.
Right.
So pretty much like they were like I think they were like a group from New York and shit like that. You know what I'm saying?
Uh huh.
Very influenced by the Jackson Five, like any other R&B group and stuff like that.
Right.
Candy Wayne blew up in '95. Heavy D, put all his time and effort in the fucking group. Um, then they had hits like Every Little Thing You Do,
Right.
If You Want It, shit like that. But then all of a sudden, there was like a lot of group creative differences between the group and then Heavy D and shit like that. Because I know at that time, Heavy D was, Heavy D was leaving Uptown and shit like that too. And then,
Right.
they started working with Puff and shit too. And then they had like publishing issues because they felt like the powers to be did not want to let them write their own material because one of their songs when 12 wrote for them, shit like that. Then all of a sudden they broke up after the second album. They ended up, disbanding, had a lot of legal issues here and there with certain members of the group and shit like that. Like I said, just running down like the whole biography and stuff like that too. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Honestly, this was a pretty good episode of Unsung. But I'm not gonna say that they were like the Jackson Five of their time and shit like that. If you ask me and shit like that, you know what I'm
No.
saying? I mean, because at that time there was like groups like Immature,
Right.
which later been known as IMX. Which I'm not gonna hold you. I was more of a fan of IMX than Soul for Real and
Really?
shit like that too. By the
Wow.
way, so what?
Really? I didn't know that.
So what? I can't hear
I
you.
said I didn't know you was more of a fan of Immature than Soul for Real.
Yeah, I mean, I like Immature's like first two, three albums and stuff like that, just for that hip hop soul production and whatnot. But at the same time, I know a lot of people say that Immature was like the Jackson Five of their time. I'm just like, what is up with all these groups trying to be like the next Jackson Five and shit?
I didn't see that at all for them.
Yeah, I mean, they had like a more uptown, street flavored kind of deal and whatnot. Mind you, one of the members' name was Batman. Just to let y'all know.
Ah, that man.
Yeah, man.
That was
But
so
what
dumb.
did you think of the episode?
I mean, it's basically shit that I already like knew about them. I mean, how they started and they were like singing around the house, and I've always felt like they patterned themselves like the Jackson Five. They were like the trying to be like the '90s version of the Jackson Five, except it was
Right.
for them. And you had Jay says the Michael Jackson, and he was like the little one in the group out of the brothers, and each one of them could sing lead vocals. You know what I'm saying? That was great, and they were great. I felt like um I feel like they got a raw deal with the second album
Yeah.
because that was I believe that's when Andre Arella left and Heavy D had
Yep.
took over, and I don't feel like they promoted that second album well. The same way they put all their energy into the first album, and people slept on it, and then that was it. It was like after the second album, it was like you didn't hear from them, and I've always liked them. They were great. They made dope R&B. They could sing. Their first album was a classic. We talked about that like a couple years ago, and um they I know Brian got in trouble with the law,
Yeah.
and he was doing like what was he doing like something with like blank checks. He was doing something with
Yeah.
blank checks,
Yeah.
and he was going out of state and doing stuff like that. And they talked about a lot of the stuff that they did on the Breakfast Club with
That's,
Charlemagne and huh?
I said that's true.
Yeah, and you know um Jace had run off and he did his solo thing. He was doing. I actually listened to a couple of his solo joints because he has his YouTube channel and he's been dropping like solo songs for like years. And I and I don't hear nobody talking about his music, and he's been trying to build like a solo career for himself, and it's unfortunate because he could sing, and I think he would have had a great solo career if he was actually like on a major label that was serious about him. And you know, I don't know. I know they're Caribbean. I don't know too much. I mean about like how they all started to sing, but I mean with talent like that, you got to take advantage of that, and I feel like they did that, and they had the smash hit Candy Rain and Every Little Thing You Do for their first album, and it blew up, and they were living the life, and then it was like bad things started to happen, and it's unfortunate, man, because they still should be doing music now in this day and age. They still could be having albums out now, and you know, um, I'm, I don't know if people know about their story, but I'm glad that Unsung did a episode for them because for years I used to say like 20 something years went by. I used to say like, yo, what happened to Soul for Real? Where they at? I don't hear from them. You know what I'm saying? And then like all of a sudden, like last couple of years, I see Jace doing his solo, trying to make a solo career for himself. Then I see them coming out in the media and they talking bad about it. And that's another thing I didn't like. And I think that's why they
Yeah.
were. I think that's why they were going around on different shows and talking about. I'm like, I never heard about them in the Heavy D beef at all in the
Me neither.
'90s. So I think all of a sudden now, like they wait till Heavy D passed away to come out and say, oh well, Heavy D was robbing them, and I'm
Yeah,
like, I never heard that going on.
I didn't like that part either
Mm,
because here's my thing, and this is my opinion about excuse me, their label issues with Heavy. Personally, I feel like Heavy D wanted to develop them more and stuff like that because if you notice, like a lot of these groups we covered, especially these R&B group or these pop groups or whatever, and then they all started off young. The first album is what the label wanted them to do for the most part and shit like that.
right.
But then the second album, or let's just say the second or the third album, they want to like write more material. They want to have like a more mature image and shit like that because um I know I heard some of the second album. I'm not gonna lie, it was actually pretty good for some
Right.
songs I've heard.
Mm,
That you can definitely see the maturity, but at the same time, I felt like some of those songs was more justified, was more utilized for 112 and stuff like that too. If you ask me, and I felt like Heavy D and to an extent Andre Harrell, they probably got blindsided by how they were and by how they were because
mm,
they want to have more creative control and shit like that too.
right.
But my thing, and this is one thing I didn't really care about them. Don't bite the hand that fed you
Exactly.
and shit like that because let's be real. I'm gonna be getting my flack for this and shit like that. I have, like I said, I like the group,
Uh,
but it's a reason why the music after they stopped messing with Heavy D didn't really go nowhere. I'm just saying.
well, I don't that part. I don't know. I don't know if I mean they I don't know they alluded to that. I mean I feel like they were trying to say without them coming out and saying that they were blackballed by Heavy D. I don't think Heavy D would have did that at all.
Yeah,
I don't. He wasn't that type of person. I didn't never got those type of vibes from him. And I think we there's many artists that they've dropped only one album, two albums, and then you don't hear from them ever again. But I don't feel like they he had something to do with that. I just feel like maybe like I said, like after their second album in Duga, like they started getting into trouble and stuff, and you know Heavy D went on to do his own thing. He was acting at that time. He wasn't really doing music anymore after like
right.
a couple of solo albums. The label Uptown MCA, it folded. You know what I'm saying? I never heard anything about that. So I was like, well, this is all news to me because I never heard from any. I never heard of Heavy D having even a beef with anybody. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, where's all this coming from? Like they wait until Heavy D passed away to start coming out and saying, oh well, he was taking money from them and he wasn't looking after their project. And why
Yeah,
did they do this shit? I didn't. Why didn't they say anything when he was alive?
they weren't saying this fucking shit when he was alive, but when motherfuckers dead and shit like that, that's when they
Exactly.
run their mouth. And
Exactly.
that kind of rubbed me off the wrong way because you
And
don't
they
really get every D side of the story.
and they got flack. They got blasted for that on social media. You know, from saying that, and if it almost it felt like they were being like some spoiled brats
I agree.
that they didn't appreciate what everything Heavy D. If it wasn't for Heavy D, that first album would have been a classic
I
because
agree.
he was the overseer for that first album. You know what I'm saying? And the whole look of them from the dressing to the type of songs they were picking to sing on, and that's all Heavy D right there. You know what I'm saying? So they all that credit goes to him, and I don't understand how they come out and say all that stuff like years later. And I didn't. I mean, it was that to like generate buzz for themselves. I mean, they wasn't dropping a new album around that time. You know what I'm saying? At least if you're gonna come out and do that, you gotta have like a new album or documentary coming out for you. I don't. They didn't have nothing coming out at that time, so I didn't understand why they were going around and talking bad about him.
And you said social media was blasting them and shit.
Yeah, because they said it on social media, and then like they were on the Breakfast Club, they were on, I think they were on Swing in the Morning, they were on different
Yeah,
platforms I saw, and they were saying that Heavy D he stole money from them, and he didn't look after he wasn't interested in doing music with them any like stuff like that. I'm like I never heard nothing like that back in the '90s when they were out. So I feel like they waited until Heavy D passed away to come out and say all this stuff. I'm like they didn't say that when he was alive though. They were quiet like silent like church mouses. They didn't say
exactly.
nothing like that when he was alive, and then they wait till he dropped dead to say, "Oh, well, Heavy D wasn't good to us," and I don't believe none of that.
Because you also got to look at it from Heavy's perspective. Because look, let's be real. At that time, Andre Harrell left Uptown for Motown. In my opinion, Heavy D was left in charge, and Uptown was still relatively in good spirits. But at the same time, MCA was trying to make its way and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? They're
Right.
trying to make its way to like take out Uptown or whatnot. Because Monifa was still popping and shit like that.
Right.
Then
I'm
you
about to
had
say he had Monifa. I'm like, I never heard Monifa come out and say Heavy D
hell
treated her
no.
bad.
Then you had the Lost Boys and shit like
Right.
that. They were doing their thing.
Right.
Never heard Lost Boys talk shit. But then you had
Exactly.
these Jackson 5 knockoffs and shit like that wanted to talk shit. And I'm just looking at myself like, on some real shit. Y'all not touching Boys to Man, Jodeci. Hell, y'all not even touching Drew Hill. Let's be real.
Right.
Let's be real about that. And I'm not trying to say that's to dry hate and
Mhm.
whatnot. Like I said, I like their music, but that part kind of that part kind of like
Yeah.
it kind of threw me off and shit like that. Cause I don't like when these motherfuckers you don't hear from years. Whenever like somebody they work with close to they die or some shit like that,
Right.
that's when they want to come out talking all this fucking shit.
They.
Cause
Uh,
I know Sinead O'Connor off topic. Sinead O'Connor trying to say some bullshit like, "Oh, Prince abused me and stuff like that"
yes, I
after he
remember that.
died, and Arsenio Hall got out her ass like,
Right.
"Yo, what the fuck? That's how come
Mhm.
you said this shit right after he died
She
and stuff?"
she was saying that he was chasing her around the house with a loaded pillow. He tried to beat it with a loaded pillow and shit.
Ah,
Like, come on,
no one believed that shit.
come on, man. You know, they were great because they were great for when they came out. They were huge when they came out, and I think they suffered the same unfortunate um events like Chi Ali, like when Chi Ali was like, his mentor was Chris Lighty, and then when Chris Lighty killed himself, and he
Yeah,
was like stranded on relativity, and relativity didn't want him to leave that label and go over with Chris Lighty, the Def Jam or whatever, when he got the deal
yeah,
with the Violator deal or whatever, and
yeah,
and after that happened, that's when Chi Ali turned to a life of crime. You know what I'm saying? So that it's like the same thing that happened with Soul for Real. Like when their mentor passed away, it was like they were left stranded, and it's like, and even before he passed away, but it was like after that second album, Do Good, like they parted ways with him, and you didn't hear from them for like a whole 20 years. All of a sudden, when Heavy D dropped dead, it's like, oh, Heavy D ain't look after us, and he stole money from. I'm like, I don't believe none of that shit they were saying. You know,
Shit.
and it's bad. I'm like, if you're gonna go out and say stuff like that, you better be promoting something. You better have something to back it up. Don't just come out and say all of a sudden after 20 years, like, oh, Heavy D was stealing money from us, and they didn't have no documentary coming out or no new album, nothing. So it's like, oh, you just doing this for like a like clickbait or whatever. You know what I mean?
You know what I'm saying?
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
I know
That part is fucking.
they dropped the Christmas song like a couple maybe like I want to say like 2 years ago. They did a Christmas song. Like there's a video for it on their channel. And but again, there's no album. They didn't have no album out or anything. They just like dropping little songs here and there. You know.
Yeah, man. All I gotta say about that shit was that they kind of lost my respect a little bit. I mean,
Mm,
a little bit. I mean, I never really fully respected them at first, but
right.
they kind of lost my respect just for them talking shit about Heavy and shit like that too. And just be real. Like, if it wasn't for Heavy, nobody would know who you guys are and shit like that. You
But
know.
well, see, the thing
And
is like a lot of these groups, when you don't like especially the groups in the '90s, when you didn't hear from them for like 20 years, they could have been dropping mixtapes. Like the mixtape scene worked for 50 Cent. It worked for Lil Wayne. It worked for Dipset and artists like that. There's no reason why they couldn't have been dropping mixtapes during that time. To still be to still be dropping music at for like the 2000s and stuff. We didn't hear from them for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? Nothing. It was only Jace was like doing his little solo songs here and there, but he never got signed to anything. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah, but then they said they have to raise
So
their families. They have to raise their families too and stuff like that. So you just gotta take that into
so
consideration.
so that so that meant that doing a shit with blank checks, illegal shit with blank checks and all that. You know what I'm saying? You can't blame Heavy D for that. That ain't his fault.
I agree on that part. I agree.
You know,
Yeah, man, that's crazy.
it's like same thing with Chi Ali. It's like okay, Chris Lottie died or whatever. It's like yo, he still could have been. He came out and he was supposed to drop new music. You still waiting for the new music that he didn't drop yet. How long you been out of jail for? Like 5 years?
Yeah, that shit ain't dropping.
You know what I'm saying? It's like don't wait for Fat Joe. Fat Joe's not looking after him. You know, so it's like they try. It's like they try to like blame their mentor for what happened. It's like yo, y'all niggas could have been dropping music, and especially now it's easier to drop music in this day and age. There's no excuse.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
man.
So I just was like, they still should be dropping music now. I don't understand. You know what I'm saying? They could be coming out with singles and stuff or EP or something. You know, just like making the media rounds and talking bad about Heavy D after he's dead and gone. I don't like that.
Yeah, that is
And
just like what you.
this is an artist that I've seen more than once in concert, and he was great. A lot of people can't say that. I don't. You never heard nothing bad about Heavy D in the media, so like I don't buy what they saying about that.
I agree. Yeah, man. That's pretty much all the episode of the Unsung. So for real and shit like that. You guys can watch it. Check your local listings. Check on YouTube and stuff like that. I think the next episode is the Moni Love episode.
Oh wow, that's gonna be great.
Yeah, that's definitely gonna be great and shit like that. That's an artist I definitely want to hear her story
Yeah.
and shit too. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy because we just both talked about the albums not too long ago and shit too and shit.
Yes, that was great, man. People got to put more respect on Moni Love, man. She's forgotten about.
Yes.
She's
All
great,
right. All right. Appreciate this, bro.
no doubt.
I'm about to get ready to go to Greensboro and shit like that.
All
I'm gonna
right,
definitely drop this probably this weekend and stuff like that.
cool.
All right. Have a good night, y'all.
You
Make
too,
sure y'all
man.
subscribe. Peace.
Peace.